Patrick was at his most vulnerable, recovering from a painful wisdom teeth extraction. His nights had devolved into a grueling 3-hour cycle of sleep and heavy pain medication. At 4 a.m., he woke up delirious, tossing in a sweltering, unair-conditioned bedroom. Out of the dead silence of the night, a distinct sound bled into his room. It was a heavy, rhythmic scratching, like an animal dragging its claws against wood, and it was coming directly from the roof above his bed. Assuming a raccoon was trying to burrow into the attic, Patrick hauled himself out of bed. He grabbed one of his father's heavy-duty flashlights and marched outside into the dark to scare the pest away. He swept the beam of the flashlight across the low-hanging shingles. The light caught movement, but it wasn't a raccoon. Standing on the steep, uneven roof, frozen in the glare of the flashlight, was a fully grown, completely naked adult man. In a fraction of a second, the illusion of safety shattered. A routine, annoyance-driven pest check plunged Patrick into a waking nightmare where normal, predictable logic no longer applied. Patrick screamed. The man instantly reacted, sprinting across the sharp, loose shingles with impossible barefoot speed to evade the blinding beam of the flashlight. Patrick ran around the side of the house to cut him off, expecting the intruder to freeze. Instead, the man launched himself off the edge of the roof, slamming into the concrete below in a drop that should have shattered his legs. He didn't even pause. The man sprang up entirely unharmed, charged Patrick, and tackled him to the ground. He began wildly clawing at Patrick's eyes, spitting and grunting with savage, uncoordinated fury. Over the screaming, the back door burst open. Patrick's father lunged into the yard and physically tore the attacker off his son. Covered in Patrick's blood, the man broke free, effortlessly scaled a tall backyard fence, and vanished into the pitch-black woods. The police arrived, searched the vast tree line, and ultimately found nothing. Analyzing the attacker's terrifying actions as clinical symptoms of extreme human biology provides the only explanation for how a human being could survive and execute such a savage encounter. The intruder left behind 2 specific unsettling details: his total lack of clothing and the frantic digging marks on the attic vents where he'd been using his bare hands. These are classic behavioral markers of severe drug-induced psychosis, a condition often associated with substances like methamphetamine or PCP that completely rewrite the brain's operating system, plunging the user into a state of excited delirium. This animation shows a cross-section of a human brain experiencing severe chemical stress. The hypothalamus, which regulates body temperature, malfunctions and overheats the body to life-threatening levels. This severe hyperthermia forces the individual to violently strip off their clothes in a desperate biological attempt to cool down. Combine that soaring internal heat with severe chemical paranoia, and the brain defaults to a primal instinct, finding a dark, cool shelter. That desperate need to burrow explains the frantic scratching on the roof. By the time he reached the shingles, the intruder was operating on pure, desperate impulse, trying to carve out a den to escape his own internal boiling point. The man's violent aversion to the flashlight reveals the true state of his nervous system, a sensory overload that drove him to sprint barefoot across sharp, uneven shingles. Severe paranoid psychosis causes massive pupil dilation. When the eyes are stuck in a wide-open state, a sudden beam from a heavy-duty flashlight is physically agonizing and deeply terrifying to a hallucinating subject. The man tried to flee the pain of the light, but Patrick sprinted around the house to intercept him. Without realizing it, Patrick cut off the man's only viable escape route, acting as a critical escalation trigger. The flashlight cornered an already panicked, hallucinating mind. By trapping him, Patrick forced the intruder's brain to shift its biological imperative instantly from desperate evasion into violent confrontation. That brings us to the final, most terrifying anomalies of the night: how the intruder survived a dead drop onto concrete entirely unharmed, and how he overpowered Patrick with such feral strength. This diagram illustrates the mechanics of a maximal adrenal response. During extreme trauma, the brain floods the body with neurotransmitters that create a dense chemical blockade, effectively muting all pain signals before they can even be processed. This triggers a state of hysterical strength. A cornered brain entirely bypasses the body's natural safety limiters. It recruits 100% of available muscle fibers to fire at once, even if it means tearing the body's own connective tissue in the process. The eye-clawing, grunting, and spitting weren't calculated martial arts. They were the chaotic, flailing defense mechanisms of a cornered animal trying to blind a perceived threat to secure an exit. The attacker didn't possess monstrous superpowers. He was literally destroying his own physical body to generate the explosive physical force required to survive a brutal fall, break a hold, and launch himself over a fence. Patrick collided with a human being whose higher reasoning had completely flickered out, replaced by a brain stuck in a loop of panic and survival. The realization of this encounter is that unfeeling, feral violence remains dormant inside every human nervous system, waiting for the right chemical trigger. When chemical extremes force the brain to revert entirely to its reptilian, survival-focused core, reasoning or pleading with the individual becomes biologically impossible. This biological reality validates the ultimate reaction of Patrick's mother. Against the unpredictable, violent extremes of human primal biology, physical barriers and early warning security cameras are the absolute only defense.